How are you today? You are all great marketers here, which means that you're focusing on the 4 Ps of marketing. Funny story, I was in marketing for 4 years before I ever went to business school. I didn't know anything about 4 Ps, so business school just taught me that everything I had been doing had names and templates and all that sort of stuff, frameworks. So you're focusing on the 4 Ps, the right person, the right product, the right place, and the right price. We don't do any of that at Persado. We actually assume that you've done that work. What we do is we help you find the right message. If you do all of that work on the 4 Ps, but you don't have the right message, then you've wasted a lot of your time. So how do we do that? Well, we have developed the world's largest database of words and phrases that are connected to one of 15 human emotions. Now, we did this with data scientists and linguists and people who know language far better than me or probably anyone else in the audience. We've tied all these words and phrases to one of 15 emotions, and you can see some examples here of what these emotions look like. Let's take a quick example. Let's assume that a retailer like The Gap is trying to provide an offer to us of 50% off a pair of jeans. Now, to me, they might use urgency, which is what it sounds like, right? Sale ends Saturday, you must act now, etc. But to another customer, they might use achievement, which is a very different message. That message would be, you really deserve this pair of new jeans. Now, they're giving us both the same offer, but they're talking to us in very different ways because they know that we're different people and we respond to different language. That's what our database does, is we're able to take a look at your existing marketing and the words that you're using, bump it up against the database, and tell you what kinds of emotions are you using today. And then we're able to look at your industry, your competitors, and eventually your own campaigns to tell you what are the emotions that your customers are most likely to respond to. This is what most companies are doing today. And we use data from eDataSource, and I know I saw somebody checking in before that eDataSource is here. And we again bump it up against our database. And what we see, and this is very, very common, this is an actual prospect of ours in the telecom space. What we see is that the emotions that are being used are not the ones driving the response. So the way you read this chart here is for this particular telecom, their highest performing emotion, over thousands of emails that we analyzed, was excitement. And yet it's one of their least used emotions. Their second highest was fascination, but that runs in the middle. The ones they're using the most, gratification, encouragement, achievement, they're using them over and over and over again, but they're not the ones that are driving response. What if you knew exactly which emotions to use in order to drive that response? Wouldn't you use it? And here's some examples on the right of some of our emotions, just to give you a sense of what the language looks like and how it's different. So how do we do this? We have a testing methodology that takes a look at thousands and thousands of permutations of the language that you're using today. We always start with your control, right? Because your control by definition has been performing, right? So we take a look at all of the thousands and thousands of permutations of words and phrases, and we bring it down to a test of about 16 different permutations, or what we call variants. We then look at the pieces of those variants, the elements within those variants in our testing. So what we can find is that in this particular case, you've got maybe multiple emojis that you're starting off the subject line with, and you have a couple of different pieces of emotional language at the beginning, and then you have some descriptive language at the end. And what our system does through testing with actual customers in the marketplace is it identifies the perfect combination of those elements to get you a winning subject line that is going to defeat your current one to the tune of what the Humana one did before. And we don't just do it for subject lines. We also do it for email bodies. We do it for web landing pages, social media ads, pretty much anywhere you're marketing with words. If it's testable, we can use our system to improve the language. So we take a look at various parts of the message while we're testing. And one of the things that our system does, which is fascinating, is it weighs the relative importance of these things. So we've talked a lot about emotional language. And what we have found is that emotional language over tens of thousands of campaigns contributes an average of 60% to the response rate. But it doesn't always. And at different times of the year or in different industries, there are other pieces that contribute as well. You have descriptive language, which is generally what your product offer is. There may not be emotion in 50% off or double rewards, but it's a piece of the puzzle, it's a piece of the language puzzle that has to be included in your marketing. You have calls to action, which can be in some cases hugely relevant and in some cases less. We look at formatting, bold, exclamation points, all caps, underlined, etc. And then we look at positioning. In a subject line, think about the video that you saw before. Where is it positioned within the subject line, front, middle, end? Or if you think about a landing page, is the call to action at the top, in the middle, on the bottom? Is the image above the headline or below the headline, etc.? We're able to test all of these things at once. I like to call it multivariate testing. And I'm telling you, this works every single time. And before I go into this case study, what I forgot to tell you is that I came to Persado almost a year ago after being a 2-time client. So I was a client at Discover and at Humana. That case study that we showed was actually my team. So I used this technology, and I, probably like you, was approached by dozens and dozens and dozens of MarTech companies all the time. This was the one piece of technology, aside from Movable Ink, which I also was a client of, that actually worked and delivered unbelievable results. And I was so excited I felt like I had to join the company. So Microsoft is also a client of ours and also a client of Movable Inks. And they use, this case study actually involves using both of our technologies. So this was an email, a full email, a subject line and a body. And as you can see, the first thing that we did was, on the left there, the words in red are what the control subject line was. So they had a little emoji, looks like the party hat emoji. And it said, nice work, first name, you earned a certain number of points this month. We ended up the winning variant after we tested 16 different combinations, changed the emoji to the check mark, changed nice work to congrats, and we said that we're confirming your points and reward updates and closed. That combination, plus the changes that we made inside to the landing page, resulted in a 52% click-through rate, a 32% open rate, importantly a 32% order rate, right? So that's where the business is happening. And the 4,600 permutations, that's just what our system did in the background. Microsoft didn't have to put 4,600 permutations out in the marketplace. They put 16 out. But that 16 represented 4,600 different combinations. So the way the math works essentially is that those 16, because it represents all of those permutations, we're able to pick those individual elements out like in that video. And sometimes what happens is we actually create a 17th. We create a version that has pieces in a different order than any of the 16, because that 4,600 really incorporates every possible permutation. The other really fascinating thing, and this is the thing that I thought was most important as a client, we don't just deliver the results, we tell you why those results happened. And that helps you make better decisions. So in the case of the Microsoft subject line, what we found was that the safety emotion, which is we're confirming, so that links up to safety in our database, contributed over half of that lift, right? So emotional language, in this case, is pretty critical. Look at the descriptive language, which is just the points earned. It had almost no value at all. And think about it, most companies are focused on that descriptive language because that's when you're talking about yourself, right? Our reward program, or join these or get these benefits, or our loyalty program, or our hotel, whatever, describe here. And in this particular case, that description meant almost nothing. They literally could have taken it out and not mentioned the number of points, and they would not have affected the results. However, the emotional language had a huge, huge impact. We did the same thing for the email body as well. And again, you find out what's important. Okay, has anybody seen that cartoon that's been circling around about the Hippo? Do you know what Hippo stands for? Hippo is the highest paid person's opinion. So imagine you're sitting around a conference table with a bunch of people and you're looking at creatives, right? And everybody goes around the table and says, I like the blue one, I like the red one, I like this headline, I like this photo. And then what's the answer? The answer is the Hippo. The Hippo comes in and says, this is the one we're doing. It's a completely subjective decision. But we arm you with the data to go back and say, look, we don't want to make subjective decisions here. We want to base our decisions on data, on math, on actual numbers. And so that example that I showed, that I told you about of the landing page, where all that in that conference room, all they were doing was arguing about the image. Well, you as the marketer can say, have your image, because I know it doesn't matter, as long as I can have my call to action button, because that's the part that matters. Or in this particular case, with Microsoft, you know, I don't really care if you put the number of points in there or not, because I know that doesn't have an impact. What has an impact is this emotional language, so Hippo, please don't change that. And this is a subject line and an email body. And look, Black Friday and Cyber Monday are coming, right? And we all know what that means for email. So here was a deal that they offered. Cyber Weekend will be over before you know it, was their control subject line. We added the infamous paperclip emoji, and we said, update these massive deals up to 50% off because you're on our list. Now there's a lot of emotional language going on there that you can probably tell, but also we added some descriptive language like the 50% off. Inside, if you take a quick look at the body, it doesn't look like a whole lot changed, but we actually made some significant changes. They had the up to 50% off all week long up in that green strip above the headline. We ended up making that really the center part. So when we talked about the location of the elements on the page, this is what we're doing moving around pieces on the page. You can see in this particular case, we kept the same call to action button. We over doubled the order rate with these changes. And I love to see order rate numbers, because open rates are great, click-through rates are great, but at the end of the day, what we really need is for people to do business with us. And what's awesome about our system is we can optimize to any KPI that you want, as long as there's substantial volume for us to do our testing and our analysis. And in this particular case, we're able to bring it all the way down to order rate, which we more than doubled, to the tune of a 71% revenue lift. And again, a quote here from our friends at Dell: Persado has consistently delivered high performance that impacts both engagement and the bottom line. It not only delivered results, but changed the way we think about language. We too want to change the way that you think about language, so you're not that man walking down the street not knowing the language. Thank you guys very much for your time.